What's up, everyone? My name is Wes, and you're listening to the Ear Coffee Podcast. Today's episode, I talked with all four members of St. Paul quartet Robot Slide. The band recently released their long-in-the-works debut album, Extend. We got to chat about the 10-year creation process for the record, how their approach to creating music has evolved, their inspirations, and a whole lot more. Without further ado, here's my interview with Matt, Todd, Jake, and Liam of Robot Slide on the Ear Coffee Podcast. How are we doing this warmer than I expected morning?
It's a gorgeous day.
Mm-hmm.
The sun is shining, the birds are chirping, and we're about to pod some casts. Just to get everything going, if you want to do introductions, just state your name and your role in the band. We'll go from there. Anyone who feels called by the Lord to go first can go first.
We'll just go around this way. I'm Todd, and I play drums in the band.
I'm Matt, and I play keys and lead vox and Wurlitzer piano, keyboard.
Legit.
My name's Liam. I play the bass, guitar, and Moog synthesizer and sing backup vocals.
My name is Jake, and I play an MPC sampler and do vocals and kind of take care of the graphics for the band. So a lot of the stop motion and promo materials and
Rad.
design stuff.
This is totally unrelated, but because of the promo, for, like the photo on your Bandcamp, where it's like all of you as kids, for a second I was like, is this a band of talented 8-year-olds?
Yeah, you have
Because
to
like
clarify.
that's kind of badass, but also like I don't know if I want to have 8-year-olds on the podcast. And once I like actually listen to the music, I'm like, okay, these are not children. Okay, we're good.
Roblox Slide.
Yeah, so that photo is 2001, I think, at Mall of America for a video game competition, Smash Brothers competition.
Melee, I'm guessing, or 64?
No, 64.
64.
Or was it Melee?
I think it was Melee.
I think Melee
yeah.
was
It
out
was probably
2001.
2002.
Yeah,
You were
yeah,
playing
these
in
guys know a
the
lot better.
competition?
Todd and Jake were playing. And
wow.
yeah,
I
we
think I didn't know
snapped
that.
that pic with a digital camera.
And then we digitally added a child photo of Liam to it.
I was like, I wasn't sure if it was like
I
a
was
full
not
collage or how much is. We could just turn this into a Smash Bros. Podcast. No. So I always like starting interviews off on the same kind of note. I find that pretty much any musicians that I've talked to over the years have had a long history with music. They have been just listeners before they were even people that made music, and they just have a really deep connection with it. And so I'm curious if you do recall, what was like the first kind of time you really had a very personal or special connection with music kind of growing up, whether it was as a listener or first getting like your first instrument and just kind of set you on the path that would lead you to playing in all sorts of bands, or in ensembles and groups and continuing to perform and kind of set you on the path you're on currently that led you to this humble little podcast.
Me, Matt, and Jake, as siblings, all took piano lessons like a lot of people when we were young. I know for me, I think there was like a big turning point in like my relationship to the idea of being in a band or something, because we have a cousin who played in this band called Carnival of Sorts. And I remember us all like going to see them play. And that was like the first band I ever saw where like I knew the people. And it was like, oh, these are just like people in a band, like this is just my cousin and his friends. And I think that, that was like a big thing for me, being young and feeling like, oh, you can just like be in a band, like you don't have to be super famous person to be able to make music. Like you can just play locally. And so, I think that was like, for me, when I really started to think about making music as something that I would legitimately do in my life above like being in band in school and that kind of thing. I like played in the school band and percussion and stuff.
Oh, we love that. Well, Joe and I actually met through college band, so we always love some symphonic band or like concert band representation.
Yeah. I've been reflecting on, because Jake posted this old video of me like playing this Yamaha keyboard with all like the crazy sounds I got it when I was in either kindergarten or first grade. And I was taking piano lessons at the time, but I just loved like putting headphones on and just like not playing my music, just improvising on it as a little kid. And then I kind of got away from that for so many years, just with formal training, being like in choir and, just being like a drama geek in high school. And then I went to school for classical music, and it was not until I came back to the Twin Cities that I got back to just seeing all these creative musicians. And decided that's what I wanted to dedicate myself to, rather than this,
like reconnecting with kind of like the more, just like getting your hand, just getting out there, just kind of playing shows, making
like no
music
rules at all, and so that's just what it's been past 15 years.
Yeah. I mean, I also I took piano lessons as a kid. I remember loathing it. But my big thing is that I just kind of never shut up. So, I was always making noise. I was always singing. And so my parents stuck me in a youth choir and kind of grew from there. Continued singing in choirs and eventually picked up a violin too and started playing cello. Like Matt, I'm a classically trained singer and went to school for music composition. And, I mean, there are a lot of rules, certainly, when people think of classical music, but there's also a total element of being able to be a renegade in that world, too, that people don't think about a lot. And so I guess I tried, for a while, I was living in these rules, and then eventually realized it doesn't matter what kind of music you're making, you can make your own rules, right? And rules are good in a certain way, right? Rules without structure, music becomes boring or kind of pointless in a way. But if you're making your own rules and creating certain guidelines that you can choose to follow or not, suddenly you have a kind of a direction of where your music can go. And so, yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that we have a lot of rules in this band. We have these self-imposed rules that we don't really speak about, but that are, kind of there under the surface.
Yeah, I think that's definitely important, kind of for I guess grounding a band, or especially just connecting a group of musicians. Because if you don't have anything to kind of keep you on the same page, then it's just either going to be complete chaos, which is maybe sometimes what you want, or it's just going to kind of be nothing or boring, like you said.
Yeah, and I think for myself, I sometimes feel like, as Liam is talking about sort of classical training and musicality, in the band, I kind of am probably the least musically trained person, and I attribute that to a lot of, also I started out taking some piano lessons, but a lot of my musicality came in waves, sort of, or I feel like I took a lot of breaks from things. When I was growing up playing piano, I kind of quit that, and then later started playing guitar and took lessons, but then sort of stopped doing that, and then came, I think, a lot of, for myself, musicality and performing came out of being in my early 20s, when I was living in Germany and playing street music there. And so when I think about musicality and sort of what I bring to the band is sometimes I really get lost in the music language of when they're speaking, or sometimes I'm sitting on this thing and feeling weird because I have samples that have chords on them, but I can't really follow along with a lot of I can't read music, and I can't I don't understand that, but I think I bring a lot of intuition and intuitive music through that, which I think also came out of I'm playing an MPC, which is traditionally a sort of hip hop production tool, and I think also that was something that I listened to a lot when I was growing up. It's kind of old school hip hop, and in Germany, a lot that came from a lot of people that were around there kind of making boom bap music, and yeah, so these styles of music, folk music, playing guitar, and then hip hop and production, kind of come as more of a intuitive style of music and more accessible. So I feel like that's kind of what I bring to the band, is some kind of untrained, but just what about this, and put in some weird sound, or that was kind of how it started out. So
yeah, it's always good to add some weird sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's an amazing having an MPC being one of the main instruments, or using samplers is Jake's Jake's samples are as important as like a lead guitar would be or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
It just adds some really important limitations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Whereas I think when me and Liam and Todd, there's a time where we were just playing music together, and it was just like, it was pretty dorky. You know, a lot of chords.
Yeah.
Trying to be clever, you know, like really clever about stuff. And then, yeah, once me and Jake started making music with MPC, that's when it became like, I was like, oh, now I'm making cool music. Like,
This is actually connecting a little bit
cool
more
music, yeah.
on a more immediate level. Yeah,
It's
just
still
a different
smart,
way.
you know. It's we try to.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, whenever like I read about, especially like a lot of like hip hop producers or people that are, or even just folks that are using samplers as their primary musician, like a lot of them come to it kind of without that training and follow the intuition. So those kind of like lend themselves to each other, like you were kind of saying. So that's a cool thing to kind of note and think about. Going from there, so obviously we have some gaps to fill between when three of you first met, obviously as siblings, and then Liam later came into the picture. So just kind of trace the history of Liam, like all these musical experiences you had to kind of set you on the creative path, but then leading up to Robot Slide, because I know you've played in a lot of different ensembles, even like across the world, even, or just playing there in Germany, but also just playing in a lot of different groups and organizations, ensembles here locally, before even coming to Robot Slide in the last like handful of years. So just kind of fill in on how all these musical experiences led the four of you to kind of make this band together, and release the record you just put out that we're going to talk a little bit more about.
Yeah, there's kind of like two threads. So I think like maybe me and Jake could talk about how we started, and then Todd and Liam also had some important experiences together. But I was kind of in St. Paul by myself. Todd was somewhere else. Liam was somewhere else. Jake was in Germany, and Jake moved back to the cities, and we were just trying to figure out. I had this like little practice space rented, and I'd been writing songs, and I'd kind of just left my old bands and was kind of moving away from a crew of people that I'd been making music with for a while, and we were just trying to figure out like how to make music together. So we somehow came to this MPC thing, I think through Ableton. We were first just like playing a sample pad through Ableton, and then just had this like really beautiful, I mean, I guess it was like a couple years of where really like we weren't like writing songs really, or trying to play shows or trying to be a band, where me and Jake were just kind of like, you know, hanging out in this space.
Yeah, I think the experience for me of how, I mean, I came back in 2014 after being gone for about 5 years, and Matt had this little practice space, and it was kind of like coming back, not really knowing what I was going to do. I also had a degree that like wasn't valid in America, and I found that out when I came back. So I studied for 5 years and then came back, and they're like, oh, sorry, that's not really an American bachelor's degree. So I was kind of like figuring out what to do with my time. And I know the experience, I know the MPC thing came out of, like I was talking before, these friends of mine in Germany that they're, and also it's kind of funny to think back to like German culture and how a lot of everything kind of seems like it's always like 10 years behind in some type of way with music stuff. Cause all these guys are like really so into golden era hip hop and had like Jay Dilla posters everywhere. It's like Jay Dilla was their idol, of course. And producing everything with, you know, just in that type of way, like on MPCs with, you know, sampling records, sampling jazz records and making this, you know, what is kind of like considered lo-fi now or whatever.
Retroactively classified as
yeah,
like lo-fi
right.
chill beats.
Yeah, chill beats. Yeah, just making mad chill beats. But that experience when I came back was like, oh, cool. I'm gonna get an MPC. That seems like something that can kind of carry like a project more than just being like, oh, Matt and I sitting in a space playing guitar or something, you know, and guitar and keys. A lot of it that happened that came out of the experimentation too was just like being just us two together, spending a lot of time we went on a couple camping trips too, where we took a little Tascam microphone with us, and we're just like hitting sticks on logs, and like whipping sticks through the air, making the sampling that stuff.
Axeman.
Went into
Like
Axeman and just like sitting there with digging our hand through the, the ball
the
bearings
bins and everything, the ball bearings. Yeah.
And kind of put some of that stuff into some weird sounds and packs. And then a lot of it was just Matt taking synth samples. So like using the MPC as also a drum machine, but then also just like an instrument, like a keyboard that has 16 times 4 keys on it. And then, so there's that like just evolution of that. And then I bought a reverb pedal for it. And that kind of like set up the sound of how to kind of humanize the machine in that type of way.
Yeah.
It was also kind of crazy because like me and Jake really hadn't spent any time together in 5 years.
Yeah.
And before that, we were like high school, so we're more at each other all the time. And it was cool to like, we're like getting to know each other again and then having a project to base that around rather than like what we do on winter break, which is just smoke weed and watch Miyazaki films. Or like had something
Not bad.
to like work at,
Yeah.
So, it was a really special time, I think.
And so the other thread is Liam and I playing music together, where we actually met. We were in the same dorm freshman year, and there was like, or I guess you were in a
Right
near
next
my
door.
dorm.
But we would practice in your dorm, though.
Yeah, so there was like a music practice room in the basement of my dorm, and there was a drum set down there, which I found out that Liam's bandmate brought down. And I just went down there one day and saw a drum set, and I was like, "Oh, awesome!" Because when you're in school, you're in a dorm. Like, where are you?
This must be public. It's fine. Yeah.
Well, you were like, "Hey, can I play this drums?" And we were like, "This kid's always trying to play the drum set."
Yeah.
Like, whatever, man. Come on.
Yeah, we'd always run into each other. We'd always be like down there at the same time. But we didn't really.
Who is this guy?
We didn't really connect in we kind of saw each other, and I think I saw a band he was in that was really cool called The Count a few
out The
times,
Count.
but we didn't really become like friends right away. It wasn't until maybe like junior year of school, and there was this group of friends that did this sort of monthly party open mic thing called Coffee House, where we would all just get together and people would bring their art and hang it on the walls, or people would read something they've written, or obviously there was a lot of music. And yeah, it was just this really amazing, like freely creative, again, it's like an open mic, but you're like in someone's living room and like hanging out and kind of partying.
A little bit more like personal kind of stuff. Like,
And everybody's really good.
yeah, and
It's
everybody
like
was, there
amazing.
was like some really incredible musicians, and that got
Hanging
me-
art, reading poetry, and it was just like
Yeah,
really sweet.
Everything.
And that got me excited. I was pretty into like the concert band type of scene in high school, and kind of started playing jazz band my senior year. But through a lot of college, I was kind of playing drums, but I wasn't like playing in bands and stuff. I was just kind of like coming home and jamming with Matt and doing that kind of thing. But through Coffee House, I met Liam, and then a few other friends, Martin and Brittany, and we I started to jam a little bit with Martin on some of his songs, and we ended up putting together this band called The Lazy Reason.
Shout out The Lazy Reason.
That Lazy Reason. Yeah, this band would not exist without Lazy Reason for sure.
Yeah, and it was just amazing. It was really great for me too, especially again, like, just being, I'm sure a lot of people experience this, where you're like in high school and you're in band or orchestra or whatever, and then in college, like if you don't have those opportunities that are continuing to like feed yourself as a musician, then things can potentially like start to peter off. I think that's where a lot of people lose music.
yeah.
And I still, I was never at the point where I was like, oh, I'm like not a drummer anymore, but I wasn't really doing it that much until I started playing with that band. And yeah, it was really fun. It was a really amazing experience for me. And that's how we started playing music together. So
So that was in Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah,
We
it
went
was
to
in
school
Madison.
together, and then eventually both found our way here.
Mhm.
Todd took a hiatus in Texas for a little while after that, but eventually we all ended up in the same city
Yeah.
by the grace of God. And yeah, I don't know.
I mean, we were basically like Liam had moved back after college. We'd all kind of had these like little mini music experiences together for many years, probably like 5. Because I was going to Madison to visit Todd and Liam, check out their bands and stuff. That was in 2010, 9, and then like I think we kind of officially played our first show as Robot Slide in 2017.
When was the first Mr. O? It's a
Yeah,
bonk
I think that was
head,
2016.
double, triple, trapple show.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was like this really long gap. Sorry, we had some different band. We did a different band name for every show for our first, like,
And you really got to
4
hear
shows.
it. So the first one we played was
Mr. O.
Mr. O.
Mr. O.
OH.
Because these guys are all Mr. Olson.
Yep.
And then we played a show as It's a Bonk Head.
Bonk or bunk?
Bonk.
Bonk.
Bonk. Okay.
Bonk Head. It's a Bonk Head.
Which is a pretty good band name.
Is it?
I don't know. I think
It's a great band. It's a great.
It's so Coldplay. They're just up there now.
Yeah.
And then one is Double Doppel Triple Trapple. That was Matt really dropped that one on us at the last minute. It was like,
Yeah,
Matt,
they didn't know that one. That was going to be the name until they saw the flyer.
Yeah.
And so we were really struggling with the band name for many years. And then we did find one in an alphabet book that I had received on my first birthday. And so, yeah, I think, it's going through the letters. QR.
yeah, Robot Slide Truck Umbrella.
Yeah, it's like truck. Yeah, Robot Slide. They're the
next to
2
each other.
letters on that
Queen,
page.
Pizza Queen.
Pizza Queen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Truck Umbrella.
And the like t-shirts that we have now, that image, if you see that image that says Robot Slide, that's actually like the picture from the book that we
Okay.
got
The unauthorized reproduction.
Oh, and then there's Truck Umbrella too.
Yep.
There we go.
Just to be clear, there was no copyright information present on this image, so
Yeah.
Yeah, we think it's public domain.
we're gonna just
Yeah.
call it public domain. If
mean,
somebody
people-
comes knocking,
Yeah. I mean, people just like put like cover comps on Bandcamp like every single day without getting any licensing, and
Yeah.
they're fine, I guess. So,
I mean, if we ever get sued, our band makes negative money. So it's like you'd have to pay us.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
that's how that would work.
that's how that works.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
pay
Like
us
the
and we'll
lo-fi
change the
beats and
name?
stuff too.
yeah,
All the lo-fi beats, like when is Matt Groening gonna come for those people?
yeah, or yeah, even like with
Vaporwave.
the samples, vaporwave.
Yeah.
That's what none of that stuff's like. Or most of that
I don't
stuff
think
isn't
they
on
care
streaming
until you
yet.
start making,
Yeah.
some
Start
dough.
making some money.
Yeah, which is on one hand, it'd be nice to make a little money, but also like you're not doing it for the money. So like it's
Seems
fine.
kind of impossible, but yeah.
It's definitely not easy. I feel that.
The goal right now is to almost make our money back.
Yeah.
You know? That'd be cool. To just lose $100 would be cool. Yeah.
That's acceptable. We can roll with that. So once you start jamming with all these different band names, kind of working as a quartet, what had been like the songwriting process? Were these songs that you kind of had worked on, or that you kind of all jammed on separately as various pairings or individually? Especially since there wasn't any recorded music or stuff, at least I could find on Bandcamp under the Robot Slide name until a few years later. So there was
Yeah.
at least a period of time where you're mostly just, I'm guessing, practicing, playing together, and then playing shows. It's like, what was kind of like, what songs were you doing? Anything from the record, or like what was
Yeah.
kind of the initial era of the band rise like, as far as like the songs you're making, the musics, the sounds?
Well, it's
It's not too
interesting.
pretentious.
Yeah, like all of the songs on this album Extend, except for one, are on. I gave Jake and Todd and Liam like a Dropbox folder or something 5 years, like almost exactly 5 years before we finished the album, that had those songs as demos. And some of that had like some work from Jake on the MPC. There's a lot of MPC on it. Because me and Jake had been like starting to form songs, and there's a little bit of drums from Todd. But it was mostly just like something me and Jake made and that I kind of stitched. I guess I would say I stitched together. And that was like the beginning of me learning how to edit music and like, really use a DAW. And I think once I handed those demos to everybody, and then that was kind of like, okay, we're gonna start a band. Like we're gonna make these songs and we're gonna try to like put this together as a group and play shows.
The demos, by the way, are incredible. Like when I
believe it.
got my hands on it, I was blown away. I mean, it's just like, this is something I want to be a part of, right? It's like you hear them and you're just like, this is the coolest. This is just like so cool.
Yeah.
It's extremely chill. It's a cool vibe that like is, yeah, it's just MPC and you know, these synths, and it's really messy, and there's just like a very a really nice chillness to
Yeah.
it that maybe we'll try to recreate. You know,
Minimalism too.
Next album.
minimalism. Yeah,
Is it
Which
pretty
is
like
not what we have going on right
No.
now with our recorded music.
yeah? That kind of answers the question I was about to ask. Like, is it pretty? Would you to your ears now, especially having obviously just recorded and created like the final version of the album? Is it pretty radically different to your ears, or like is it still like there's a pretty clear through line between like the initial ideas where it was just the two of you with some MPC, guitar and vocals, whatever else, and everything you added, to the full versions of the songs with all four of you and all the collaborators and these fleshed out versions?
I think for myself, there are honestly some moments when we started rebuilding, when you work on stuff for so long, that when we started like rebuilding some of these songs, that I had some like, you know, felt like I missed some of the old, like had some nostalgia towards some of the old things because of it's really like the structure of it is all there. But for example, like we had this song called Glimpse where the original version that we had of it was like just really teased down and minimal. But yeah, it sounds very different, but I think it does carry the spirit of that. Like some of the structures of the songs were just so well put together that they wouldn't fit in the album in that state right now, because the whole album is like kind of this kaleidoscope, and those don't really have that element of, you know, variety going on in that type of way.
and dynamics. I mean, I think that was like a huge problem when me and Jake were, because we were kind of toying with the idea of trying to play live as a duo, but we'd always run into this thing where it's like, oh, if we really need to get like louder, like bring some energy to this section, like how do we do that? You know, it's just kind of like, it is like, this is going to be a chill lo-fi beats to study to type band.
Just playing like 1 hour sets of like one song, just
People are just kind of chatting, just hanging out.
coffee shop. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. So Liam and Todd came in and just turned into a raucous.
Now we're a rock band.
Yeah. No,
Yeah. So at least going into the stuff that you can find online, for like the early days of Robot Slide, this isn't the first thing that at least chronologically was released, but this is the earliest piece of music under that name, at least online. I said I'd love to hear the demos at some point, but we can at least talk about those in a more abstract way and still focus more on the actual
Bring them
album
on the
that
dark
people can
web.
buy. Yeah. You have to get real deep and like torrent them or something. But the earliest song on there is Looper's Fin, which is recorded in 2013, I believe it said, and it's just Todd and Matt. Yeah. So what was that? Especially like deciding to release that so much later and having released a couple actually like songs, Robots at least ended up on the record and kind of moved past, like it'd been 7 years. What was that song kind of, what does that still mean to you? And what led you to release it even and just kind of still put it out there? Is even like a little thing on Bandcamp, just kind of tossing it up there for fun, maybe.
Yeah, well, that came out of, you know, all this we say about all these different threads. Like, again, there's all these different times where just Matt and I were jamming together, or, you know, we met. So there's lots of different combinations that kind of happened in the interim before we all came together and started making music. So that came out of Matt and I. We're just spending some time jamming. It might have just been over like a winter break or something. I don't know exactly. Or maybe that was right after I came home from school. But yeah, we were just hanging out and jamming in this tiny little space in St. Paul. And that little guitar loop thing was just something that I had written. And it was literally just that, like whatever bar or 2 bars. And I showed it to Matt and he really liked it. And so I think we just like recorded it, and then mostly, you know, everything that came after me, like recording that little guitar loop, was something that Matt put together. And so Matt, maybe you can talk a little bit about how you actually put that song together and like.
Yeah, that was. I had just gotten like my first synth, which is not even really. You can't even really call it a synth. It's like It's not the micro Korg. It's called like the mini Korg.
Okay.
And it's like just all digital and really crappy, but it has this really cool like. The fine tune is almost infinite, so you can like fine tune it like multiple octaves.
Okay.
Whoa.
So that's like the
Yeah.
main.
pretty
it's
gross
really,
tune.
It's super cool. And I started with that, and then I wrote a Wurlitzer part. But that was basically Todd had recorded this loop, and he had been back in the cities for a year, and I was always hounding him to start a band. And he was like, "No, I'm going to move to Austin, but hopefully I'll loop back." That's what he said. And so that's actually a song about me being really sad that Todd was leaving, and hoping that like we would find ourselves in the same place again. And so I think I kind of wrote that as Todd was dispersing and as Jake was coming in to the space. And that's kind of what that song is about. So it's like a deep cut, but also
Definitely deep cut.
You know, it's the kind of thing we've talked about we talked about recording it for a little bit, and then it's just like it's really like beautiful and weird and kind of like
it's just like the planet Earth like cover art.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why it's Loopers, you know, Finn, it's done. We're not going to like re-record this.
I think that also, I mean, it goes back a little bit to an earlier question of yours about like where the songs came from. Most of the songs on Extend, with the exception of one, well, I mean, all the songs on Extend are like products of Matt. Like Matt wrote these songs. The one that was more written collectively is Train Song. And then the rest of them are, I think, maybe Glimpse, I guess, was more of your situation, Jake. But I think that we're excited about the prospect of creating music more collectively as we go forward, I think. I mean, we can absolutely still continue to bring individual songs to the band, but it's like, I think it's going to be a lot more robot slidey. So like, write some songs together.
Yeah. Get all four heads together and see what comes out. Yeah.
I mean, also like some of those releases just came out of the drive or desire to just actually put something out when we started. And I think we're still learning a lot about how to promote ourselves and kind of getting over some of those roadblocks that you have in yourself of like what you can, to get yourself out there.
Yeah.
Which was kind of like brought up at the Cedar the other day. Matt made some comment about like, because his partner set up the show at the Cedar, and when we asked for it before, or talked about before, we were kind of like, nah, we can't do that. We can't really play the Cedar. Like no one really we're not at that level yet. But then it was a great show. It was an amazing show.
Awesome.
It was a good turnout, and Matt was like, yeah, if not for Emily pushing us to do this, we might be over at Acadia right now.
Thinking about this on the way up. It's like, no shade, like nothing against Acadia.
We've played at Acadia. There's nothing wrong
We
with
played at Acadia.
Yeah.
I
feel like every band has played at Acadia at some point.
But which is a good time to shout out Aura Vortex Records, which is Emily from Sister Species. That's how we got hooked up with you.
Yeah.
Because Emily is our record label manager, our band manager or whatever. And she's like really pushed us to do this. Like, yo, you can like make Instagram posts about your band and you can like have people interview. Cause I think there was this like so long where
you can podcast. It's okay.
You can do it.
And you can tell people to follow Robot Slide on Instagram at Robot Slide.
There we go. Get those plugs
Which has
in.
been like something I think we were really way too cynical about for a long time, which was a result of our own insecurity. And it's been a really good pill to swallow to just be like, hey, we're making like art that's meant to be like listened to by other people
to hear it,
and we want people to hear it. It's not only for ourselves. But that was like, obviously we spent 10 years making music together before we really like got to that point.
Yeah.
Which is kind
wild.
of sad, but also really cool that it like we got it,
It's just
got out
long build up period, but also like it's just getting started. Like you kind of were already saying, like already have plans to start working on new stuff more collaboratively. And it's like it's 10 years. That's nothing to shake your fist at, but also it's still just getting started.
we got our whole lives.
Got our whole lives ahead of us.
the whole rest,
other
however
half.
long the planet lasts.
Yeah.
Cool. Just since you already brought it up, with work with Aura Vortex and working with Emily, obviously mentioned their band Sister Species, also in Betazoid, both really cool projects. And now you've been working with them for a little while. How did you actually first get connected and like even meet her? Because I think at least there was a show that y'all played together with Sister Species a few years ago,
Yeah,
but
Seward.
maybe it was even before that. At least I just looked on like the Facebook page. I don't remember exactly much about it. But just how did that kind of relationship, that partnership get going? And
Emily asked me out after a New Year's party. And so we've been dating for like 5 years.
that would do it.
I was making it all like really public. But that's like me and Emily are, we're like really close in that
Yeah.
way. And I think it's like, this band is with my brothers. Like we played our release show with like our really like super important, like Sister Species is a really important band to us, So we're really like all about these really super, maybe like
fostering these
almost
connections.
too close relationships to be doing this kind of stuff. But yeah, Emily is like, obviously I'm biased because we're really close, but everybody knows this about Emily is like extreme positivity, extreme like lack of any sort of self-consciousness about any, really about anything.
Yeah.
And so, that kind of relationship, although it happened organically, has also been like really important in this weird, like kind of professional sort of way. It's like, like we talked about, embracing some of these things. So it's really deep and really important.
We could talk about Robots, I guess, since that's the early song that's released online, and it was the first song released that featured all four of you at least together instead of like pairings and kind of working in whoever was available and pre-pandemic and just depending on where you all lived and everything. Talk a little bit about kind of creating that song, where it came from, especially you three kind of coming into it and figuring out what you can add with your distinct kind of musical understandings and histories and everything, not to get too like galaxy brained with it.
Well, we all recently found out what any of these songs are about. None of us bothered to ask until like a month or so ago. Like, hey Matt, what do these lyrics mean anyway, bro? But maybe Matt can talk about that. But there's at one point there's actually a metaphor within a simile, or was it the other way around, which I found exquisite. But coming in, Matt made this joke that's not really a joke at our show that was like, I'm the controlling older brother. And is, a lot of my parts are prescribed by Matt on some of these tunes because, for my whole life, as a bassist, I've played too many notes. It's a big problem for me as a bassist, is playing too many notes. And I'm like really working on it. And Matt really drops the hammer on that kind of thing. And it's a fine give and take. And especially on that part with my bass line, I do get some freedom to play too many notes, which is great. But for the most part, I get to sit back. And there's a Moog line on there that is very, very nice and minimal and lines up very, very closely to what Matt is doing. And that song for me is an example of one where I didn't really have to work to write a part.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did, kind of organically write a part, I was reined in a little bit, but Matt also gave me a little taste of freedom.
A little bit of freedom.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to like even think back on a lot of these for
I bet.
when
Yeah,
the parts got
so
written
long
because they've like existed in a lot of different forms, and like the part that is on the record and is like the real drum part and bass part and anything else came out of like a long time of just jamming on stuff and then slowly refining or taking things out or adding things. So yeah, it's like really hard for me to think back, especially for that one. I think that was maybe the second song that we actually recorded after Rabbits. I think it was the very first one. So, but yeah, we were just listening back on like a lot of the drum parts got really written and mostly finalized. They're pretty similar to what they are now. In like a short period before we played our very first show, which Matt initially just booked for himself, and then he was like, "Do you want to play drums?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." So we spent like 10 days. Must have been during summer break or something, because we just like got together every single day for like 3 hours. We would bike to the practice space. And so, yeah, honestly, I don't remember how the drum part came together, but it was just like jamming out on something that was written before. And then probably it was pretty similar to what exists now, but then over a long period of time, especially when we started recording, is when we really started to take like a critical look at all the parts and figure out exactly what
There's kind of
needs
locking
to be
things
there and like what doesn't. I also tend to play like more or weirder stuff than I really need to. So when we started recording things, there's a lot of times, especially where Matt really pushed me to like, okay, everything doesn't need to be like some weird like 3-on-2. Like there's still a lot of that, but a lot of the drummers I like, especially like in the Minneapolis jazz scene and stuff, there's a lot of the people that I really look up to and influence me a lot. And so yeah, there was a lot more kind of like craziness and over time.
I think another thing we haven't really spoke on that's a pretty huge part of the whole project and the band, something that we spend a lot of time doing is, and it kind of speaks to what Liam and Todd are talking about with the tightening up parts, and how Matt kind of does take a lot of sort of like control to get parts right and not have them be too much or not have them sound like a certain thing or sound like something that might be like a musical trope or something like that. But that we have like hours and hours, if not like days worth of just free open jams. We spend a lot of time like just going in the space and just hanging out. And I mean, that was like for a time, we weren't going to this space to like make a band project or something. Oftentimes, and that is kind of speaks to the looseness and maybe the like, floating elements of what we've been doing have just been like, and sort of sometimes like directionless, because we would be like just literally playing the most random stuff. And a lot of that is, I don't know how many of our current songs have come out of like that type of experience. A lot of them are more based on like a skeleton that Matt came up with, but there have been some new things that we've been doing that are like literally just out of some, like and it'll be like 3 hours worth, of just, and sometimes it'll be one theme or something that's going for, 45 minutes and then
just do like the jazz fusion thing where you just take like a 24-minute segment of like a 4-hour recording and be like, this is the track.
And we started just having to delete a bunch of stuff, but we did buy a 12 terabyte hard drive recently. Like literally there's that many like hours of improvisations from over the years. But so an interesting thing about Robots and like what Jake was talking about, how these kind of songs started. Well, I remember the exact moment when that song was written, and it was literally like me and Jake were in the space, and I had just kind of programmed that patch on my Korg DW synthesizer from like, it's like an 1985 digital hybrid, like
1895 Protos.
And I always have a habit of, kind of starting to freak out about things like, oh man, we can't find anything cool. I'm like playing, and I just played like 2 notes on it, and Jake's like, oh, that's really cool. And then I was like, oh, it's cool. And then that, the part's so simple, and that was
need
the song.
one other person
like,
to tell you it's cool.
I don't know. There are a bunch of songs actually. Rabbits was improvised at first as a jam between me and Jake. Glimpse was a jam. Layers was a jam. There's so much stuff that is just me and Jake improvising, and then this little snippet just sounded really cool. And then I would do the work to like to structure that out. But pretty much everything was like, if Jake also said it was cool, then it would turn into a song. If Jake didn't say it was cool, like, I have a really bad habit of just like recording. I mean, I like my phone on my voice memos has like, I mean, literally like thousands of ideas that I've never showed any of them. And I know they'd just be like, oh, it's cool. But that moment where somebody's like, yeah, let's do that, then that's where it becomes a song. It's not like oh, this is the best idea out of 1,000.
Yeah.
It's just like by chance.
And like focusing on like the tangible excitement kind of from like a more in the moment thing. We're like, oh, I liked that you just played. Like that just happened. Let's keep doing that. Yeah.
I think one thing to think about also the songwriting process, and I know a lot of other bands go through this process of like they write a lot of songs and then kind of pick out like the 10 for their album or something, you know, like, and they'll have a whole, you know, catalog of sort of either, but kind of more completed songs. But pretty much the songs on the album are the songs that we have like fine tuned over the years. So we don't really have that many other full tracks. And I think that kind of speaks to our process, that we are pretty picky about what we even like spend time on in the first place.
And the songs
developing
themselves, these songs on this album are just like so complex
Yeah.
that it's just like, I think we're hoping that
Yeah,
it's going to be a little less complex.
I
as
mean,
we
that's
go
something
forward.
that's sort of been like a double-edged sword too, because then it's like we get stuck playing the same things and we lose some of that more of that, you know, spontaneity to everything.
Yeah. That's
Just coming
definitely
up
something
with
that,
an idea and just letting it happen rather than
yeah. Train Song is the one that has like the little chip tune breakdown too. Like
that's the goose at the
Or-
end. La Goose.
the Goose. Okay. And
But-
I think I was listening all on like the car ride over and just for like the third or fourth time. I was like, oh, ugh.
Yeah, but
But-
Train Song is just like bananas.
That's
Yeah,
another
it's just like-
bananas one. So just like kind of like the vocal like parts on that are really crazy, but like there's just a lot happening, and especially I'm imagining the perspective of V4 is different, having been with these songs and worked with these songs for years and years and years, versus me who's just like very new to them and still just kind of engaging on a much different level, where it's like just different perspectives on the same thing. So I'm curious also to just kind of get maybe a little more about that. Kind of how did you come up with all these like different complex parts? How did you kind of land on them? Was it all through the jamming, or how was it like, oh, let's see if we can add a part here? Was that a little bit more natural or more deliberate kind of in the song skeletons that you were composing? Especially in contrast to kind of the new direction y'all are headed in, where it's kind of diminishing that at least a little bit and kind of streamlining maybe some parts.
Yeah. You know, a lot of it did again come from like Matt in the editing room with these jams, like figuring out, you know, putting the puzzle pieces together of like different parts to try and figure out the flow of the song. But then there was also a lot of work actually as a whole band, you know, especially with something like Train Song, where we had all these pieces and then we actually had to sit down and figure out, okay, how do these things fit together, and how are we gonna, you know, like one of our eternal struggles is trying to figure out how to transition from one part to the next part, because we have all these like cuts where we kind of go into this totally different thing. So there's a lot of that, like, oh, how many bars should this thing go for, and where can we cut things down so that we're not like sitting at something for too long of a time. But yeah, it's really interesting with these songs now, because we've been playing them for so long and sitting with them for so long, that it all feels like very natural. All of these weird cuts and like jumps and times where we speed up and slow down. At this point, it's like, oh yeah, that's just how the song goes. And especially when we play them live and people are like, how did you like know that this was the time to like do this thing and figure out that? And yeah, it's just like when you spend, you know, 7 years or whatever
Becomes
working
second
on songs,
nature,
and you're like,
yeah.
oh, I don't know, I thought that was pretty normal place to cut it.
It's easy-
and they're like, no,
easy to
it's
forget.
not normal.
It felt right to me.
Yeah. It's just like spending like an insane amount of time working on this music is a big part of how that sort of like sound comes together of this sort of kaleidoscopic like jump cuts.
I mean, I also don't want to downplay like the how collaborative the band
Yeah,
has
totally.
been. I mean, like I literally didn't write I never like wrote Todd's drum part, or I mean, there may be a few moments where I was like, Liam, you should play exactly this on the bass, but that's usually when it's like really simple. But pretty much everything is, and like Jake, I would like help him make the samples, but Jake's parts are, you know, like completely, you know, everybody is super original, and everybody in this band is a really good composer and artist in their own right. Like, I think what I did was kind of like took on the role of curating these parts and being like, yo, this like just like simply doesn't work. And that was really hard for us to figure out how to like say yes to everything and then like
right.
still make it listenable. And so like this album, which is like really maximalist and like really has a lot going on, it's kind of like the bare minimum of like, all right, we said yes to everything, and like this is
what can we
this
take
is like
out?
what it kind of satisfies every. I mean, Liam still like twiddles around and does some crazy shit on the bass, you know, in this album.
A little bit. I get a couple of lines. I mean, that's my thing. I mean, throughout the process, it is very, very collaborative. At first I was giving Matt too much credit. He's, he is definitely the foreman of the operation, but it is a very collaborative process. And I mean, like, there's a lot of butting heads that happens. And these guys are all brothers, so it's like they've grown up at each other's throats, obviously, and in each other's arms too, right? It's just like, and they've all got their own agendas too, right? And it's so funny that when I find myself like siding with any one of them on a thing, because oftentimes, you know, I got to form alliances to further my own agenda, right? Which is always
It's like geopolitics,
playing more
but in the
sweet
band.
bass lines. So, yeah, it's just like it's an interesting process, and you know there are roadblocks, but it's always like finding ways to compromise with each other, and at the end of the day, it's going to be fine.
I think also specifically the sound of the album is very different than what we started out doing before we started recording. And I mean, there's kind of like a phase of us playing live shows for a while before we really were serious about recording the album, but the same songs, and then going into recording them and then coming back out, and like what we played at a release show was very different than like the songs when we played them a year ago or 2 years ago when we were.
Yeah.
But that also, you know, the album itself is a lot more multi-track than anything that we were doing before. But some of that multi-tracking is like bled into this, you know, just the nuance of it, or kind of like the essence of the multi-tracking of having like really weird sounds has kind of bled into the live performance a little bit more.
Yeah, what's really
But, like,
amazing.
Really,
is-
we have so many sounds and there's like weird samples that Matt had put in that aren't really live played parts and things that just add to that.
But the beautiful thing about an MPC is like now they are live played.
Now they are.
You know, we like take that thing. Yeah, it like bounces back and forth between like the DAW and Jake's MPC and the band and the mic. You know, everything just kind of keeps swirling around, and like, yeah, releasing this album, then just finally we played it live, you know, 2 days ago. And it was like, okay, these are the final versions of these songs. And we really are like, we move on now.
Yeah.
Which took a long
We
time.
can stop
but it's
writing
also
these
important,
songs.
like, you know, yeah, I think talking about kind of like the kind of like artistic tension that happens between all of us. And I've been like, as I said, you know, it's kind of, we've been working on this for 10 years. It's kind of weird, right? Well, not really like working on this album, but we've been,
Working
took us
together.
so long to put
Yeah.
something out. But now we're also like older and better at communicating, and probably have like a lot less of the weird baggage we had when we were in our early 20s. And like, I think what's
less of the
kind
egos.
of like cool about doing this later in our, I mean, I'm 34, you know, is like we have the ability to communicate with each other. I mean, it's always going to be hard. It's like your family, you know, like you can't avoid it. But we have the ability to like stay committed to doing it, which I think if we had been doing this a lot earlier with three brothers and just like dealing with all that like brother and also just like masculine weird energy, like at that time, it easily could have fallen apart, you know?
Like learn. Kind of going off what you were saying with kind of synthesizing these like influences that maybe like are similar reference points and shared musical like appreciation, like things that you all enjoy. Especially kind of going with some of your previous experiences, like performing, like when Emily initially sent out the email, had like mentioned a few like fairly, at least to me, like mind blowing almost, like playing with like the Minnesota Opera, playing with these other kind of like the Gamelan ensemble, all these different groups, and then some like the other choral stuff that maybe you did either as individuals or some selection of the four of you. how did you synthesize and kind of bring those influences into the sounds and like the musical compositions for this album? Because if you look at like the list and kind of like figure out what kind of those styles of music are, you maybe wouldn't hear them immediately. Besides, like obviously there's like vocal arrangement that transfers pretty straightforwardly. But how did you kind of allow those to seep into this album, and as you were making it over the last decade and however long since you at least like kind of locked a lot of these parts in?
It just kind of happens.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like
Osmosis.
I mean, I think that's another cool thing about like not being like only a band. You know, like we've had all this time where we're kind of playing semi in this band, but also doing all these other musical things. I think that's been like super important for us. And also just like we love all types of music. Like me and Liam have sang in some really weird like choral ensembles together, and Todd plays Brazilian drums, and Jake's like actually an amazing acoustic guitar player and like folk singer, and used to be a pretty good freestyle rapper. But we're not gonna
dust that.
We're not gonna make him do that anymore.
Get some bars on the next album.
Yeah.
We do actually have some stuff that has some bars on it.
Yeah, we got some
Yeah,
bars.
I
Looking
can
forward
definitely
to
say, yeah, for me, like, Brazilian music is something that I've been playing and pretty serious about for, 10 years now or something. And it affects a lot of how I play drums. I mean, in some ways it's like kind of more direct in terms of like the kinds of grooves or the kinds of like swing or feel that samba is like mostly what I play has. So a lot of that comes in a really direct way, but also I feel like it helps, especially like collaborating a lot, to be playing that kind of music, because a lot of what I play is it's called like samba rio. It's like the kind of samba that you see at Carnival in Rio de Janeiro. And, those groups have hundreds of drummers. When I was in Austin, I played with a samba group, and, we'd consistently have like 45 drummers at every practice playing. And it really taught me to to let go of some of that ego of like, showing that you're really good or something, or because it's like you play the part, there's no fooling around. There's no showing off. Like if you're playing a samba part, then like you just have to play that part. And it is often like the same bar over and over. You might just be playing the exact same measure for like 20 minutes. And so just getting into that mindset of really like, okay, I'm just like locking in to this group, and there's nothing about what I'm doing that's special compared to any of the other 40 people that are here.
You're part of the whole versus like,
you're part of the
I'm
whole.
the cool one. I'm
Right.
the good one.
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, what's my contribution to this? It's like, well, my contribution is to be like another person playing this part, right? It's not to like my creative juices are gonna like, it's like, no, you're just like another person that adds more of this sound, and you need to do it well, and you need to like lock in with everyone. So I feel like that's helped me a lot in playing with people to like, again, break down that ego and be like, okay, maybe sometimes I do just need to like play something really, really simple and just lock it in.
Last question, specifically about the record. Just kind of talked a lot about pretty much everything to do with it, which is awesome. But just kind of going around in the circle, it doesn't have to be a part that you yourself played. Just something. What is one of your like favorite moments just on the record? Something that always kind of stands out to you.
Yeah. There's one part that I really enjoy playing and hearing. I play drums on I mostly just play drums. There's one song where I play synth on, and that's Glimpse. And there's this kind of synth line that happens kind of near the beginning of the song that Matt and I wrote together. And yeah, it's a nice, for me, it's like a really nice break from, just like really kind of like rocking out on drums and stuff, just to play this very like, it's very chilled out and kind of like meandering part. So it just has a very different feel for me musically than everything else I'm doing. and it's really fun to play live. So that's something I really love playing that part, and I love listening to it too. Another part that I really like that was hard to get together is in Train Song. There's this train crash that happens where things just get like really chaotic and crazy for a little bit. And there's sort of like a more shreddy drum solo, sort of like freeform part there. And that took a really long time for me to like feel really confident about, because that's not really mostly how I play. Like I don't play a lot of like shreddy fills and stuff most of the time. So to really like get the confidence to do that, also like Matt pushed me a lot to like really learn a part for that, because I was always just kind of improvising, and that was cool. But to really like lock in, okay, just figure out at least like a skeleton for what that looks like, so that when, especially for recording, right, that like that you can just like hit it and rock it out in time and not like speed up or slow down a bunch, which I do a lot when I'm like really shredding. I'm like, oh. So that was like a real challenge to get to the point where I felt really confident about that. And it's a really also very fun part to play on the very other end of the spectrum from the synth line of something where I really just get to like kind of go wild and hit things really hard and use the whole kit, like play everything. So yeah, those are some of my favorite moments.
I think Bubbles is a really special song, and they're just, I don't know, on all these songs, this thing is like, I spent so many hours like for all these songs going absolutely insane. But I remember Bubbles just like being pretty natural. Jake came in with this just like crazy arpeggiated thing. Like he bought a new pedal, and you usually the pedal doesn't write the song for you, but that one like really had some like crazy. I just remember Jake coming in and we were like, this is so sick. And that was kind of like in the early stages of recording. Also I opened a LaCroix can in that song and close mic it. And it kind of coincides with some of the stuff Jake's doing. I don't know. There were just a lot of really fun. I had like a lot of fun and there were like a lot of roadblocks because I had never recorded anything before this. And something we haven't talked about is that like we did self-record this in our garage studio.
Future Dust Garage.
It's called the Future Dust Garage. And that was the other thing that we're not going to talk about this, but we like built the studio by hand in this process. So we like framed it, drywalled it. Yeah. And that's where we recorded this. And so that whole process was really special. But yeah, I can't think of like a specific moment. I don't know. There's just like so many cool
very
things.
Very open-ended question, yeah.
And everything was a journey, and I just like look back and have the memory of when it came together, and it, we all like did it spending time with each other. Sometimes it's hard, but also it was like a lot of fun, So yeah, it was a special time. Glad it's over, but it's special.
Yeah, I was also Bubbles is my favorite tune on the record. It's just like it's just so and I mean they're all great songs, obviously. And Train Song is just a blast to play throughout, I mean, that's another one. I was talking about the drums, but there is a moment of that song where it's just like, all right, we're going to slow down here, and then we're going to speed up, and then it's like the song's in 7, but I'm going to play this like 5/4 thing as we speed up or whatever. Stupid, unnecessary complexity. But yeah, I mean, the whole process has just been so great. Just like spending time with my friends, making amazing music. And yeah, I mean, building the studio was definitely a challenge. There were times when we were just out in the middle of winter, like, an uninsulated building, like putting in the insulation, putting in the, it's just like wild to think about that time. And I've talked about kind of working through my own ego and what I think is best. I think is always a challenge. It's always going to be something that I'm dealing with. Probably all of us are always going to be dealing with, throughout the rest of our lives as we continue to live in a world that's populated with other people.
That's you can't really change that.
Right. And just, I think probably experiencing some frustration that it has taken us this long, to do anything with our lives. Just kidding. I mean, frustration. The frustration is real. That it's taken us forever to get this album out, but we're here now, and it's just a beautiful product.
Yeah.
And
focus on the fact that it did finally happen instead of how long it took.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
One of my favorite moments on the album, and just in songs in general that we've written, is on Levelhead. There's this part. It's kind of have there's sort of like a double side to this, but the one side of it being something that we had Matt and I had put together a really long time ago, which was sort of a gear situation with the looper pedal, where it kind of breaks down into this little drum beat thing, and then just builds up over the course of maybe 8 bars or something of just the same thing repeating over. And I listened to it on a friend took a video of it yesterday and just really liked that part. We had trombones and trumpets on it on the album. And then something that was really cool that came out of that on that song that was a huge surprise to me was Matt put in, I had recorded some Kenneth Patchen albums of poetry from just a record that I don't even know I found in some free bin or something like that. And then a really long time ago, probably in 2014 or something like that, was when we were first having the space, just record some little weird vocal samples. And then on the end of the album, or the end of that Levelhead song, after it kind of goes into there, Matt added in some really weird samples from that had been on somewhere that we would play it into something or had found them on the computer. And that, I just think that, it's just kind of speaks to that weird energy and the sort of surprising,
anything
being surprised
goes,
by someone's decision on the song. And then I think the challenge sometimes is trying to think of how to go forward with it, and to be more, to try and take yourself a little bit more seriously as a band, and hoping that we can sort of with being able to let go of the older versions of things, but then trying to hold on to some essence of just being a little bit more concise with what we're doing.
So you've already kind of alluded to this a little bit, and it's only been a few days since the album's out. So hopefully there's at least a little bit of a taking a deep breath in and feeling that sense of accomplishment. But curious if you already kind of have some stuff in the works. What is the immediate future, and what is even maybe the long-term future hold for the band? What are you kind of hoping to jump to next? Just continue to work on the new songs.
Hopefully play some shows if that starts happening again.
That too.
I think that's what we really want to do, and we've been working on some more improvisational things for live music, long form, and then just start writing more songs. Hopefully keep up some nice momentum from this release. And I don't know, probably just keep doing it. I don't think we have any
nothing concrete,
real big plans, or I don't think our ambition has changed dramatically or anything. It's just this is something that we're going to continue to do when we have energy after our day jobs as youth workers, and hopefully it's something that we have the energy to keep doing together for a while,
Yeah,
First, we're going to take a couple weeks off.
Yeah.
Please, 10 years of work.
Yeah,
a couple weeks.
Yeah, like we've said too, I think we're all really excited about writing songs in a new way and finding new ways to put things together and focus on sound and texture a lot, rather than again, the kind of really complicated time changes and weird grooves and stuff that are happening. So yeah, we're excited to be able to step away from that mode of making music where it's very mega technical and really, really hard to play. And you have to shed
Let's go
it
easy
a
on
lot.
ourselves.
And and just focus on yeah, like more experimentation and again improvisation, and yeah, just like cooling things down a little bit and chilling out. I'm sure there's still going to be a little bit of shredding that happens from time to time, but yeah, it'll be really nice. Again, these songs have existed in some form or another for so long, and I know we're all at a very different place musically than when they got written, and have different interests musically. So I'm really just excited to see where all the influences that we've gained in the past 10 years since like these songs started getting put together, how those can meld with what we've done before and make something that still sounds like Robot Slide, but also, has a very distinct feeling if we end up putting together another record or something, which I think we're going to try to do. To just feel like that's like a real distinct
I think so, do you?
piece. Yeah, a distinct.
The first
piece
one
of
just came
music.
out. We'll leave it open ended. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not making not forcing you to make
No
any
hard
like formal
promises here.
commitments. Yeah.
Yeah, Aura Vortex hasn't pressured us too much to get the next record out.
Or
so
Vortex
we'll take our
hasn't
time.
made us sign a 3-album deal yet.
Yeah. There's like the saying where it's like you have forever to write your first album, then like a year to write your
Right.
second or whatever. I'll probably have like the measurements of time incorrect there, but
No, yeah,
it's a way to kind of like get in your own head with that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
going for more of the Frank Ocean approach.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when are you
Get to
going to
it
drop
when we
your
get to
endless
it.
to get out of the album contract?
Right.
Yeah, I think something that we haven't really, that we've been like touching on in our music and playing is the experimental element of things, and sort of like breaking down some of that, and like going back to, we were talking about yesterday, like having a sample day. We're just going out for a walk or something and just bringing the microphone with, and just kind of getting back into experimenting and putting the songs
Finding
down.
sounds.
Getting
Yeah.
some new sounds. It's a brave new world out there. We get some snow sounds. We don't
Yeah,
have any
some
crunching snow. That's
And then we do
absolutely
have some songs that we've just had to put to the wayside for so long due to COVID and due to recording too. It's just like that was something that we weren't focused on at all
Yeah.
for the past 2 years, especially, was being like taking some of these half finished songs or like half,
And revisiting
figured
them.
out ideas and actually doing something with those. So
Yeah.
I think kind of a mixture of taking some of those ideas and being like, let's finalize these, and then starting on brand new ideas.
Really fresh stuff. Yeah. Awesome. So just like I like starting interviews kind of on the same note, I like ending them on the same note, to kind of parody another music podcast. I like to call this the local music recommendation corner. So if you just have any other like bands or just artists here in the cities especially, but otherwise just maybe in general, like friends or just people you're just fans of, just kind of shouting out bands or artists you think people should maybe check out, especially if they are digging Extend and digging the Robot Slide album.
Yeah. Well, Coal Police or Lynn Avery and Coal Police just released this really cool ambient thing.
Oh, okay.
We're really influenced, or we like really have dug Lynn's music. She makes, you've probably heard it, but it's beautiful music with Ice Blink that we've all gotten really into. Liam just introduced us to Juana Molina,
She's not a local artist.
but not a local artist. But
Hey,
we've been like really
not
like
cutting that. We'll
something-
keep it in.
It's something to definitely check out. And just saw a show last week with a band called Mr. Zip, which was spectacular. So if anybody can catch that band, but I mean, yeah, we haven't been in the live music. That world has
Getting-
kind of
getting
been
that
gone for
exposure.
2 years. So it's just kind of been, some releases we've heard. But for me, those are kind of the 3 in the past like week that I've been thinking a lot about. 3 artists.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. The Ice Blink and Lynn Avery and Cole stuff is really awesome. And also, we just have a lot of friends that have supported us that really influence what we do and inspire us. Loud Sun, one of our friends, Andrew Jansen, is a really great band that we all love. Hardy Har is another group that has supported us a lot and whose music really inspires us. So there's a few more local artists that we dig. Neither has had super recent releases, but it's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, I think y'all hit all the
Yeah, we
stops.
hit it.
You didn't talk about like Dex's crew or anything?
Yeah, I was
you
gonna
know.
talk a little bit about
Pretty cool artists.
I'm releasing my own album very soon. Well,
Oh, cool.
going to start releasing music in about 2 weeks. And my engineer Dex Wolf makes his own amazing music, and also just works with a lot of really, really talented people. Oh, boys, there's a whole lot of them.
Yeah.
Should I find the list? You want me to go find the list?
Like on like the little bingo for like every podcast, it's like someone being like, "There's too many."
Yeah,
At this
it's
point,
you
like,
just want to
we're gonna miss somebody.
I know there's a million people, but
No, but Dex did do a lot on our album too.
Yeah.
And some good friends that collaborated on the technical side of things for sure.
Yeah, there's so many people in the Twin Cities. I mean, it's just like the only reason this happens is because of local music. You know, that's like
Yeah, it keeps everybody
too many
going.
to count and name. It's just like our
Yeah,
favorite thing ever. You know?
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I mean, more
overwhelming in a good way.
more central to what we're doing right now is off of like Aura Vortex, and some of the people that work with us, like Ariana was playing cello with us, is like starting a project that
Cool.
they're kind of working on themselves.
Spaceport
Yeah,
also.
tentative name.
Yeah, shout out to Daniel Bonespur. Dan Dukic just released a really cool album a couple months ago called Footnotes that you should definitely check out.
These
AP
are-
Lose.
Aura Vortex, other Aura
Other,
Vortex
yeah.
artists.
Um,
Potentially Kaylee Conway as well from Milwaukee
Oh,
will
cool.
be joining us on Aura Vortex.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely just
Don't
like
say potentially on it.
Uh-oh.
It's not confirmed. But
yeah,
check out Aura Vortex for
the whole
cool
roster.
music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that the plug for that is, I think, just at Aura Vortex Records, and that will pretty much have all the info on
Yeah.
releases and
Like website, social media, Bandcamp, anything. I think it
Yeah.
all should be centralized. Yeah, and obviously, Robot Slide. You guys have music's all on streaming services. You have cassettes and CDs. I have now discovered.
Yeah.
And you want to repeat that pluggable? Repeat the @ so we can find you.
At Robot Slide.
Just at Robot
Easy to
Slide.
remember.
Robotslide.fun. Our Facebook page has been hacked, but if you still like it,
We're never getting it
we
back.
We literally can't
Never
unhack
getting
it.
it
I don't know what's going on.
I was going to say,
We have
because
no
I
control over
looked
it.
on there. I was like, they haven't mentioned there's not been nothing
there's
since
no-
Christmas 2020.
Yeah, I can't even
Nothing
post
about the
on it.
album that just came out.
Nothing.
I mean, I get it. It's Facebook, so like maybe just
Yeah, like who
putting that to
cares
sleep.
anymore?
Just like, no one uses this except for like our grandparents and sometimes not even then.
Yeah. RobotSlideBand@gmail.com for bookings.
Yes. Stay tuned for future show announcements as well, especially if you dig the record. I personally am hoping to catch a show, especially now that I've spent a couple days with it. Thank you so much for stopping by and chatting
you.
up the record.
thanks for having us for the
and also
coffee.
just thanks for you only came here for the coffee. It's just free coffee just at a local house. But only if you're in a band. You have to be in a band, then you get free coffee.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks again, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
The Ear Coffee Podcast is a companion to the blog of the same name. If you like this episode, please leave us a rate and review so we can stand out among the other music podcasts. You can follow us at Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram @Ear Coffee. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.